Hello and welcome to the latest webinar in our RetailX e-commerce world review series, which is taking place this week. My name is Jonathan Wright and I'm the managing editor at RetailX. This webinar focuses on our Germany e-commerce country report. The report looks in detail at one of the largest and most sophisticated e-commerce and multi-channel markets in Europe. Let me just show you what's inside there. I'm delighted to be joined today by the report editor, Liz Morell, one of RetailX's most experienced journalists and someone who has covered the retail sector for quite possibly more years than she'd care to remember. Perhaps I could begin by asking you to introduce yourself, Liz.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I think it's probably more years than I want to admit. It's a long time. So yeah, I've been working with internet retailing and RetailX for several years now, but was a retail and e-commerce journalist before that as well. So I think about 20 years I've been doing it. So yeah, but it's a great sector and I love writing about it. So yeah.
Fantastic. So I think we've established your expertise there, which is, of course, the main purpose of that. I think we're going to go through a few of the highlights of the report as part of this webinar, and hopefully it'll give people some illumination on what's happening in the German market, perhaps if they want to get into the German market, perhaps if they're facing German competitors in their own market. Whatever angle you're coming at, I think there's something here for you. Firstly, I think, Liz, you wanted to begin by flagging up some of the macroeconomic factors at play in Germany at the moment, some of which I would guess would be replicated across different European markets, and some, I guess, those particularly in relation to Germany's previous close relationship with Russia prior to the invasion of Ukraine, which are going to be very individual to Germany. Perhaps you'd like to kick off?
Yeah, Germany certainly hasn't had it easy economically. I think just as I finished writing the report, I then realised that they'd just gone into recession, so the GDP fell 0.3% for January to March. And as you say, there's lots of factors at play there. The Ukraine and Russia, the Russian invasion of Ukraine being a big one there, and the management of the energy supplies with Russia. So that was one of the first challenges for Chancellor Olaf Scholz since he won the September 2021 election. So not an easy job for him to negotiate. So yes, there's the sort of factors that are common to many of the countries in Europe, but yeah, the added pressures of certain peculiarities of the market as well.
And I noticed that one of the figures you highlighted was more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees. Obviously, that's on top for a country that took recently, I think, 1 million Syrian refugees. These are quite some numbers, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a big impact there. So it'll be interesting to see the longer term impact that has on the country.
So how much of an impact are all of these factors when you begin to take them together having on the German consumer? Now, I think we have this impression of the German consumers as the small C conservative, don't like credit cards, use little, very, very kind of cautious with money. Now, I'm not too sure how much of that is borne out by the research, because obviously the impression we get from a distance is sometimes, frankly, can be wrong, and these just become myths, as it were. I was wondering if you could begin to talk us through a few of the factors here. And on one of the slides that you've highlighted from the report is revenues for high ticket items in 2022, and showing actually quite a big decline.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the German consumer is fairly conservative. They'll look to kind of save money where they can. As you say, they're big discount shoppers and so on. We looked at a range of their spending, but particularly kind of the spending across the different sectors that we can see in the slide here. And yeah, I mean, declined in all areas, but the most dramatic falls there are in the higher ticket items. So it's just proof that they're cutting back on their discretionary spending where they can, and looking to save money and conserve what they have got a little bit more.
So presumably it's items like you're letting your sofa last for another 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's furniture, it's electronics, it's big ticket items that they don't necessarily need. That it's more of a want. So if they can put off that spend, then they are, as many consumers are across the globe as they try to kind of negotiate. When we look at the next slide as well, we looked at sort of why they shop online, and again we see the value hunt there. Cheaper prices. Half of consumers are saying that's why they choose to shop online. So they're looking for offers, they're looking for value, and really trying to get the most for their money.
That's fascinating. Are they doing a lot of things like sort of, going into the shop and comparing prices online, doing all those sort of behaviours that we see elsewhere in the world? I guess these seem to be quite, this implies to me that they're quite prevalent in Germany.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to kind of go too deep into what they're doing, but there's definitely an idea that they need to control their spending. I mean, later in the report, we look at how they expect their future spend to be, and their future behaviour around that. And we see that nearly 1 in 4 of them are looking to reduce their spending, again, on consumer electronics as they sort of negotiate this whole cost of living crisis. So yeah, I mean, they're working hard to get the most from their money.
Yeah, as must we all at the moment. Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's not. I think one of the things that I also wanted to tease out with you though was it's not all doom and gloom, is it? I mean, we think of Germany as the powerhouse of Europe in terms of industrial manufacturing, and I think that's true. That the way just looking back over the last couple of decades, the way that it managed to bring the east of the country up to sort of living standard levels to match the west, for example. It's got, as well as the industrial base, politically, it's got this central role in the European Union. There are good reasons to be optimistic in the medium to longer term, aren't they? And you could even argue, I guess, that having less reliance on Russian energy in the longer term, it takes out an area of volatility almost from the German economy.
Exactly. I think it's just been a turbulent time for the country, and probably, as you say, because of that focus of it being a powerhouse and a big player in Europe, then it's almost almost exaggerated the challenges there. But yes, I mean, there is a really good stable base to work from. When we look at the indices here that we measure, we see it's in the top 4, in the top index for all but 2 of the indices that we measure, and number 2 in the rankings for integrated index for postal development. So there's a really good base there. It's been a turbulent time, and as you say, taking out things like reliance on Russian energy will make it stronger going forward, I think. So yeah, I think that there's exciting things to look forward to. It's just been a turbulent time in the meantime.
Those figures are actually quite fascinating, aren't they? So postal development is basically, it says that it's very easy to get your goods, is it? I mean, it's easy to order stuff online and know reliably that it's actually going to show up when it's promised.
Exactly. Yeah. Good infrastructure and so on to get goods to you when they do. When you do order, and that's out of a big number of countries measured there, so that's encouraging. And you look at Germany's position in the other indices there as well. It's really, really strong. So yeah, it's a good solid ground to work from. But they've just had a turbulent time to deal with, and yeah, as I say, not an easy task for the new Chancellor since he came in.
Perhaps we should get a little higher up the e-government development index.
Yes, yeah.
It seems quite low for us, an economy as sophisticated as Germany.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide, we've got the percentage of internet users who shop online. Could you begin to maybe talk us through a little bit about what's happening here? It's a tale of steady growth, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So again, kind of where it's gone through the sort of turmoil of the last year or so, it proves encouraging for the future. the number of e-shoppers is growing. As you say, there's steady growth there since 2018, and it's outpacing the rest of Europe and the global measure. So yeah, I mean, it's up 3 points since 2021. It will have gone up again in 2023. So that growth is there. And again, later in the report, we'll see that again. But yeah, so the thirst for e-commerce is there and it's growing. So that's great for going forward.
I think that's a fascinating graph when I look at it, because partly I think we all thought the effect of the pandemic would be a big jump that would stay there, and in fact it's been much more of a steady increase. And the other thing that I find fascinating is that if you're looking at 80% of internet users shopping online, when you're thinking of a country such as Germany with such a high number,
that's a big number, yeah.
Big numbers.
Yeah, and there was another graph where we looked at the number of e-commerce shoppers across all the different product sectors, and again that has grown consistently as well. So it's not just shopping in one particular area. There's growth kind of across the areas. I think if we move on to the next slide as well, we kind of look to the future, and there we see, excuse me, there we see, yes, I mean we've got 2/3 saying they'll keep their ratio of sort of online offline spending the same as it is, but we've got 1 in 5 there saying that they're going to increase the proportion of what they spend online. And as you say, kind of, you know, after the pandemic we had the return to store, and you know, will we sort of get the sort of e-commerce growth back? But you know, that there is expected growth there, so that's encouraging as well.
I wonder if the decrease is primarily, I guess we don't really know, but primarily made up of older shoppers who've gone, right, I've had enough of that internet thing.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, I think there probably will be a sort of natural levelling out. You know, as you say, kind of there was the convenience of online for many during the pandemic, and the necessity of online during the pandemic, and some people will inevitably return to stores. But you know, with that, there's this proportion that want to increase the ratio as well. So I do think that's encouraging to look at.
So just to close on this, is there a sense that despite recent problems that e-commerce is in a growth phase in Germany, or is that too simplistic?
Again, I mean, the figures show that the level of e-shoppers are growing. You know, there's people saying that they want to increase their proportion. So there, on the one hand, there's this idea of looking for value and controlling their spending, but that's dictated by the cost of living crisis. It's not necessarily kind of a long-term behaviour. It's a necessity for now. So yeah, I think longer term there is definitely still confidence in the market and still growth in the market. It's just navigating the sort of turmoil of the moment and the challenges of the cost of living. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely still a market to be exploring. Yeah, no, definitely, and some exciting kind of future behaviours as well.
I'm glad you said that, Liz, because I do believe you've chosen some slides on exciting future behaviours. And the background to that, obviously, is that multi-channel and e-commerce are always evolving. There are new behaviours. There are things that take us by surprise. And you've highlighted a few kind of interesting areas, beginning here with social media. I was wondering if you could perhaps talk us through a little about German consumers' attitudes to social media, and you know, perhaps a little on how they've developed over recent years and so on.
Yeah, again, so we see you know, German consumers are embracing social media. I mean, yeah, you know, a lot of us can associate with that first one. We just use it to keep in touch with friends and family. But this specific, if we go further down that table, where they're specifically looking for inspiration for things to do and buy, I think that's really interesting move, that social media is now becoming a more sort of proactive experience. You know, it's not necessarily that they're just by chance finding inspiration. They're going out and looking for things to do and looking for things to buy via social media.
4 consumers, in fact, isn't
Right?
it? That's 1 in... Sorry, my apologies, I interrupted. I was going to say that is 1 in 4 consumers, so that's
Yeah.
quite a high percentage, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, looking at products to purchase, 1 in 5 consumers in Germany is using social media for that, yeah?
Yeah, they definitely. So yeah, they're on the hunt for things to buy. So that's really encouraging, and that makes it a place that retailers really, really do need to be. You know, they need to have a social commerce presence, more importantly than ever. When we look at the next slide, we see sort of how their behavior and social media and how they're buying. So we see there like nearly 2/3 have bought via Instagram. Nearly half have bought via Facebook. So again, they're really encouraging figures. They're showing what consumers are doing on those platforms. And again, it proves the point that retailers need to have presence in that social commerce arena and be active there to take advantage of this interest and this hunger for social commerce.
It's an absolutely fascinating, the percentages, in fact. So 2/3 of those who have used German social commerce using Instagram, I presume that's because it's visually led. Half have used Facebook, which I guess is where everyone communicates, even if they're sometimes a bit sort of, oh, Facebook. And the one that does jump out at me is YouTube. That's 4 in 10 of people using it. That's quite a little higher than I would have expected, actually.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on why that might be? Is it just, again, it's a visual medium, do you think? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, you know, we're visual creatures, aren't we? So if you see something on there, then yes, you know, in the same way, I guess that sort of TikTok is proving to be such a powerful medium. It's this whole idea of video and, you know, bringing something to life a bit more. So yeah, it's really interesting kind of behaviors across those different platforms.
And moving on as well, the smart TVs and smart speakers. I'm surprised by this. They're really very popular, aren't they?
I know. I was really surprised. I think my my smart speakers normally just involve me shouting and get very cross with Alexa because she doesn't understand what I'm asking. So um, yeah, I think I've had one occasion where I nearly accidentally bought something via my smart speaker. But yeah, I mean, I think these are very surprising kind of proportions, that the number of people that had bought through their smart TV or smart speaker. So again, it just shows that, you know, while we might perhaps think that things like voice commerce are a bit slower to take off, you know, they've been kind of the long promised next big thing. You know, it's happening. So I think that's a really interesting thing to look out for as well.
Yeah, it makes the German consumer a very, to loop back to where we began, you've got that sort of small c conservative in terms of perhaps attitudes to finance, but also an embrace of technology when it can be demonstrated to be useful, I think, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, as you say, kind of we're surprised by this, but yeah, I think that's the point, you know, that don't necessarily have preconceptions about the consumer in whatever market you're looking at, because they might well surprise you with what they're actually doing.
A bit of a question that I should have pre-warned you about, and I didn't. But have we got any information on subscription-based models here? How into those?
Yeah, we have. I haven't got the slides up, but let me just grab the point in the report. Yeah, and it was something that we looked at. And yeah, so we found, I think, nearly 2/3, 63% of German consumers had a paid subscription, unsurprisingly, to you know, online shopping premium service that provides free or cheap delivery. I mean, that's popular in all markets. You know, if we can, and again, kind of tied in, if we can save money, then we'll do that. And yeah, so we looked at kind of why they take subscriptions out. The free delivery of orders was and fast delivery were by far the two biggest reasons why they choose subscriptions. But yeah, you know, it was interesting examples there, and again, kind of we see subscription growth across Europe. So in Germany as well, it is something that retailers need to be looking to deliver to the consumer there.
That's fantastic. It's given us some real insights there. And just to drill down a bit into the report, one of the things that we always do is to feature case studies of retailers, and you highlighted half a dozen German retailers here, and I was wondering what made these companies particularly interesting to you. Perhaps if there's a couple of points you could get across to explain what they're doing that's innovative and interesting.
Yeah, it's just a case of trying to get a selection of retailers within that. So we've got Obi, it's DIY, Bonprix, obviously, which is fashion. Just some interesting kind of different models there. I mean, Thalia, I think, is interesting because it's looking to sort of evolve from the whole book-based business to a new sort of digital super house. So that was an interesting one to look at. And then Douglas, which is the beauty retailer, is on a sort of 4-year growth plan to sort of reinvent the customer experience and so on, and investment going into that. So there's a lot of change happening there. So it's just it's how these companies are navigating the challenges that Germany faces, so that they can kind of do best in the environment as well. So yeah, some interesting ones that we featured there.
So are they? Would it be fair to say these companies are having to negotiate probably short-term buffeting at the moment, like everybody else, but that you've chosen to highlight them really because, I mean, you mentioned Douglas, for instance, on its expansion plan, that they've got a good underlying business and an innovative business, and these are names to watch for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just they're examples of companies that they're working hard to get through the current period of sort of turmoil. But yeah, the base is there. They're interesting businesses to highlight and look at.
Fantastic. Well, there's so much in that report. So
there is, yes, it's a long one.
I would strongly urge people to download the report and to find out more, because we've really only been able to give you some highlights. We're just about up to time, I think, Liz. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise on the German market. I think I can go to the next slide now. And here you will see a helpful QR code that will enable you to download Liz's Retail X eCommerce Germany review. Did I give that? Germany e-commerce country report anyway, even.
It's the same thing.
roughly. We're good friends. As ever, many thanks to everyone who's watching. We do welcome your insights. We would love to hear from you, hear your feedback, and tell us more. So until next year, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers, Jonathan.